Hi everyone.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another one of our book talks for Latinos and Kidlit, Latinx Kidlit. I am one of the guest bloggers, soy Dora Guzman, and I am joined here with,
Hi everyone. I'm Sonia Alejandra Rodriguez, and I'm also a contributor to the Latinx and Kit Life blog.
yeah, so thank you for meeting me once again. I feel like I always look forward to our talks. And today we're talking about Snapshots from the Wedding, written by Gary Soto and illustrated by Stephanie Garcia. It is a 1998 Pura Belpre winner for illustration. And so we'll get right into it. What did you think?
This feels like such a throwback. Just when I hear Gary Soto's name for like children's literature, it does feel like such a throwback. And so
Yeah.
I'm glad that we have like the opportunity to go through just like all of the winners with this video series of the Pura Belpre Award winners. To again, and I'm pretty sure we've said this in other videos, to think about like the trajectory or how far Latinx Kids Lit has come and like the foundations of Latinx children's books. And I think this
Yeah.
is like an exemplary like example of that, right? Like what was happening um, when the award started. Um, and so we're talking about the illustrations, and I think this is the first book that I've seen use clay as part of the illustrations, because I think of like claymation, and I don't know if this was the time when like claymation was like so popular to like make
Might have been.
like animated movies using clay figurines, and I was so obsessed with how that happened. And so I was super excited to see that in like photographs or the illustrations, right? Because I imagine they were photographs and then put into illustrations for the book. And so again, just another like art form to capture like our stories and our experiences, which was fascinating. Just to, again, look at all the details in this
Yeah,
book.
I loved watching the videos of how they did the claymation
Oh
and
yeah.
not necessarily the actual video. So that was just me. I was like, I need to know how this happens,
Yeah, because
right?
it's sculpting and it's like it's
Yeah.
talent. Well, I mean, it's all of the illustrators we've talked about, right? Just talented people. But I mean, I felt this is like an additional like that. You got to sculpt the story uh, to make it happen, and so I really appreciated, I guess, that idea of like you need to sculpt, you need to bring these characters to life, like, and you end up with like little figurines, like kind of like movie dolls at the end. Which is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what stood out to me too, as you're talking about the illustrations, these are like one of the few books that has those clay figurines. That's very evident, right? That's the whole illustration in itself. There's no other mixed media, like they use fabrics. I think you mentioned before this video when we were looking for like what specific tools and art they use like Sculpey clay, textures, and that's seen all throughout um, the book, right? Each scene takes a whole spread of the book, and so essentially it's about Myra. I think her name is Myra, right? It's about her experiences, like she's going to a wedding, right? Which is something that I feel like we can all connect to, especially through a child's perspective. It's more so about the events happening, right? The drama, the
I
the
know.
food, obviously, the music, and it's less about like the planning aspect of it, which really brought me back to like weddings how they were back in the 90s.
Yeah, well, yeah, her. So this is Maya's story, right? Telling like her perspective of like this big wedding. And yeah, if you look at like the aesthetics of it's so 90s. The dresses, like all it's so adorable. But I wanted to like show maybe an illustration, right? Because just from the very beginning, like you could tell this is clay, right? And you could tell that at some point like this was 3D and then captured right for the book. And Stephanie Garcia uses found objects as well to sort of like frame the figurines and to like make it into like an entire story in this layout or in whatever frame, right? It
Yeah.
aligns with the narration, which I also think is pretty cool. And I think we've talked about other illustrators that do this, that in order to add like layers to their art will use cloths or like other textile materials or images of like something else and then like layer it into their art, which I like.
Yeah.
Um, right, the layers are the textures that it adds to the story, but then also just like as a metaphor, right? Like all of these layers that go into telling a story, and then because it's a story of a wedding, right? The layers that go into like making this wedding and all the stories that come out of it. And here we have like little Maya's like perspective. I like the start, like at the moment at the end where like the adults are doing this, but we took our socks off, our shoes off, and now we're sliding across the hallway, and here are dirty socks. I was like, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very like, it gives me such a like a feeling of like scrapbooking, and I
Oh, I
was
thought
never
that
into
too.
that much. I was never much into scrapbooking, but like you think about how, you know, you hold certain memories and certain artifacts, right, as really close to memories, like through the use of shadow boxes or scrapbooking. I feel like that just adds another layer, right, to her perspective, right? She's telling this event not only as it happens, but it's also like looking back at some of the important moments, right, captured by these play figures. So yeah, I love the illustrations just because also there's just a representation of various different people within a wedding, right? It wasn't just family. Like there was a priest, there was her family, her cousins. There's just various parts that you connect to as going through the whole day of the wedding, right? It's not just the wedding itself, it's like the ceremony and then obviously the reception afterwards. So yeah.
Yeah, I also just, um, I mean, going back to scrapbooking, I also got that feeling, right, as I was reading, and it feels very much right going to this idea of layers and like found objects and like just kind of piecing like a story together out of like little pieces. And again, I like that as a metaphor to thinking about how stories are told or how we might capture this experience of what like might be seen as like just a typical Mexican wedding, but like taking like little bits from like different uh spaces, different artifacts, different um, maybe even other stories to put a new story together. So I like that. I like that idea of like taking pieces of old things to create
Yeah.
something new. And I also think
Yeah.
that's just very like emblematic of maybe like Latinx or just BIPOC like communities, right? To take from the past or from what is old to create something present and new. And so I like
Yeah.
that from the illustrations in particular.
Is it like this illustration? This is the illustration that really brought back a lot of memories, and I don't know how I felt about it, but you know that most of us
Oh
have
yeah, the frilly
these
stuff.
the frilly socks, and I was like, and like you said, like the dirty socks, right? So the amount of detail
Uh-huh.
that she uses in this diorama piece, but when I saw these socks, I was like, oh no. I was like, well, yeah.
Yeah, and then she how like Maya says like, well, I dropped mole on my sock, so. And then I think it ends with like she had it on her dress and she like licked it the next day and it was still good. I was like, okay. I was like, yeah, that's a very like childlike perspective. I mean, as an adult, like I cannot keep my clothes clean. Like I'm always just spilling food. I'm like, oh yeah, that's for later. And so that's how the story ends, and I thought that was hilarious. Um,
No, yeah, I give up. I give up sometimes. I'm like, it is what it is. But I mean, the way that this would definitely be a good like read aloud and definitely an emphasis on the illustrations because, like you said, when I was trying to recall other books that use this type of illustration, the one that comes up is Viva Frida by Yuyi Morales. She uses again the clay figurines in her artwork. So I think just looking at the illustrations and what it adds to the story would be very beneficial to use in any classroom setting, right? Whether that's a graduate course, whether that's with younger kids, you know, for them to start making those connections and even telling their own stories, right? Because not every wedding is the same, especially in the Latinx community. We all have our various traditions.
yeah, I was kind of thinking of that too. Like if you were taking it into the classroom, um, I feel like regardless of what age, like this would be just a good opportunity to just talk about like different like wedding traditions from like different like cultures, right? Like so here
Yeah.
we're reading an example of like weddings or ceremony or religion uh, from like just like the Mexican perspective, but yeah, like I could see this as like a classroom assignment or a classroom activity of like, okay, like what are some of the ceremonies or holidays, preservations, or things that you do in your culture, and how might we capture that? Even just basically with like clay, like time to take out the no, what's that? The colorful one, is that clay? The little putty one? I was gonna come Play-Doh.
Play-Doh?
Time to take out the Play-Doh and
I
start
was like,
making.
it's not Play-Doh. I was like, what else?
Yeah, because I mean, they're not giving like students clay, right? But it's time to take out the Play-Doh and start making like a portrait, right? A self-portrait or someone. And so, like, my mind's already kind of racing. Like, okay, if I was teaching this in the classroom, what might be some like hands-on activities that I could bring to the classroom to talk about culture, to talk about belonging, to talk about celebration and joy, right, across different cultures, and how might that happen? And I can see this book leading to many like classroom activities that would do that.
And the significance of the different textiles, right, and the different patterns on, you know, on clothes, on cloths seen around. Yeah, it will definitely invite students to bring, right, some of those precious items to the classroom so that they can see not only their similarities, right, but also what makes them different and special as well.
Yeah, when you were saying like the shadow box thing or the scrapbooking, I also thought like collaging or collages. I was really into collages for for a minute. And so again, I really like this idea of like taking what you have and like repurposing for new art, right? Or for like different expressions based on like what you have. And so I like that that aspect of like the art that's being represented in the story with Stephanie Garcia.
Yeah, and sharing that, right? A lot of those keepsakes we keep in a box. Like I think about like things that I have in a box, like as we speak, right, from quinceañeras or from other things, and it's like unless you intentionally take those out, nobody really sees them. At least this way, this kind of brings out again those stories, again those memories, by bringing in some of those meaningful things that you intended to save.
Yeah, and I was also noticing as like I was reading that I mean, I imagine they're photographs, right? Because it's not literally the clay in the book, the photographs of the art, and then it's the underlay of it is like the lace, right? There's lace on each of the pictures.
Yeah.
Maybe you can see it better in the back cover. Yeah, like it's lace, like in the background, which again, thinking about weddings, thinking about layering, right? And then, so this one that I'm looking at looks like a little display. It might be like in a box, right? Because of the little steps. And then even just how emotive the characters are. I mean, look at this. What is happening, Maya?
Well, you're trying to capture movement, right? I mean, this is a still image, so you're trying to capture movement. Yeah. So they're very particular. It's very purposeful, which again allows for that creativity to stem. Not that, you know, I mean, again, depends the age that you work with, you know, if you're an educator or somebody at home, but you know, your sculptures don't have to just like stand, right, or sit. It invites kind of that playfulness of like, what do I want conveyed here?
The silliness of it all. Yeah, this is fascinating. And then even if like you want to just look at like the found objects, I mean, again, like thinking about like what you could do with this book and like applying it to like students' lives or to readers' lives, it feels very much like what objects can you find within this illustration? Because you said there's so many details. And so that's fascinating.
Yeah. And like the angling of things, like I forgot what page it was, but there's, you know, you don't just see the square image. Like sometimes there's like things coming in from the box, right? So it works with like different angles. So yeah, I would definitely use this text just to look at the images and kind of, again, have them even without reading Myra's words, right? Looking at what story is she's trying to tell here, and then seeing if it matches with her words, as well as like what connections they'd make, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I can totally see, I mean, why the illustrations got the award, right? They're so fascinating, so innovative. And I think even just like the detail or the attention paid to the details is just emblematic of what this event is trying to represent, like the story that's trying to represent with this wedding, and how much of it goes into it. So yeah, it's definitely. I'd return to this book to just keep looking at the illustration.
Yes. Yeah. There's always something new that you're going to find, which, again, right, not all books do that, but this one for sure will stand out.
All right. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me about this book, Snapshots from a Wedding, which again, I think the title like reflects like the illustrations that you're going to see, right? So you have Maya taking photographs, and it's through her lens, through her perspective of a child at a wedding. And I mean, it's hilarious what she captures.
Yes.
All right. Well, make sure to subscribe and like and check out all the links below to buy the books, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
See you next time.